Listen to this podcast now
on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Leadership Thread with Dr. Peggy Polonis.
I'm Dr. Peggy Polonis. Join me on each episode where I unravel the story that shaped leaders, tracing the thread that led them where they are today. Because leadership isn't born in adulthood. And thank you once again for joining us on the Leadership Thread, education, ethics, and sustainability.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me, taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Joe Concha does an amazing job on this station, 9 p.m. every weeknight. He is a star on Fox News. He's my first guest of 6 on this Tuesday morning. Joseph, good morning, pal. How are you?
Good morning. I loved your talk about the halftime shows in the Super Bowl before, Sid, because can you name the last band who you could consider a rock band to play the halftime show at the Super Bowl?
You know, it's funny. I opened the show today with Where the Streets Have No Name by one of my favorite bands, U2. Yeah. And they were the halftime show, Super Bowl 36, all the way back when Vinatieri hit a 48-yarder and the Pats beat Kurt Warner and the Rams. That was Tom Brady's first Super Bowl win of 7. That was U2. That's a really big act. Otherwise, not really, Joe.
No, right? I mean, you got to go back to the Who. They're 114 at the time, but that was 2010, right? And then, you know, during the 10s, I guess you could call them, the 2010s, you had some decent acts, Black Eyed Peas, Madonna, Beyonce, Bruno Mars, Katy Perry, Coldplay, Lady Gaga, Justin Timberlake, Maroon 5. And then things went south when the NFL hired Jay-Z to run the halftime show. Yep. Then we had, let's see. All right, Rihanna I have no problem with, but then Usher in 2024, Kendrick Lamar 2025, and now Bad Bunny, a guy who's going to perform in a dress so you could explain to your 10-year-old, like I will, why he just watched a first half of Super Bowl where guys are killing each other, and then I got to see a dude in a dress going off about ice. It's going to be real fun. Can't wait.
No, it's terrible, and I complained to President Trump. He was on this show literally a week ago today to celebrate my anniversary, and I complained about the halftime show, and I brought up Bad Bunny, of course, and I brought up Jay-Z. I said to President Trump, I said, he's a bad guy. You know, there's only been one white person. Sorry, I'm bringing it up. One white person since he took over. That's Eminem, who's barely white to begin with, okay? He grew up in Detroit. So it's become a huge issue. The shows are terrible. They hate Trump. They hate America. And I got to say this. I got this kid, Brylan Hollyhan, coming in momentarily, and he was raised basically by Charlie Kirk, friend since the 4th grade. He believed was the first person to see Erica Kirk, or one of the first, after Charlie was murdered. I love Brylan, but you got to do a better job then. 3 people I've never heard of. I'm sorry, I never heard of 3 of those people, along with Kid Rock. So, you know, I want to move away from the halftime show, and for the most part, there's some people at Turning Point that don't like Tucker Carlson, but for the most part, I'd be willing to go. But I'm on record saying this. That is not an exciting halftime show. Kid Rock is about 102. Sorry.
Just go with somebody who could appeal to a lot of different people. So Kid Rock does rock. But you also did remember he did that rendition of Sweet Home Alabama. A great remix, so he could do the country thing. A lot of different ways you could go with this stuff. But don't go with a guy who you know is going to take this platform and talk about how Trump is throwing out, if you'll watch his speech at the Grammys, says he's attacking and kidnapping and doing all these things to American citizens. Where, again, this is what the left does. They conflate legal immigration, like a Melania Trump who came here legally and then married the future president of the United States, and somebody who comes here illegally, like the guy who killed Laken Riley or Jocelyn Nungray or all these other people that now ICE is expelling. And when I got to hear one more, Sid, as a Jew, I'm sure this drives you crazy, one more comparison to ICE and the Gestapo. At last check, the Nazis were trying to eliminate an entire race of innocent people by snatching them from their homes and exterminating them, while ICE is literally arresting criminals that are in the country illegally and sending them back to their country of origin. Now we have a murder rate that's 125 years in terms of being at an all-time low. ICE has a lot to do with that. And when people start to conflate these two things or use that as an analogy, you've lost the argument already, in my opinion.
Yeah, Tim Walz did that. He brought up Anne Frank. That was awful. Awful. And then you had this idiot Steve Colbert say at least the Nazis didn't wear masks. He actually made it sound like ICE was worse than the Nazis. So I'm all up on all these guys. You're right. As a Jew, I hate them all. And I mention them every day on this show. But I want to get talking about kidnapping. You mentioned kidnapping. Yeah. to this story in Tucson. I've met Savannah Guthrie a couple of times. Sweet girl, and this is awful, what's going on with her mother, Nancy. Now, I guess Lisa G tells me it was reported today that there is no connection to the Today Show because they're trying to figure out why in this large community of elderly people did they take a Guthrie? Maybe they want a ransom. She's famous. I don't know, but it was said this morning there's no connection to the Today Show. What do we know so far about this seemingly awful story?
Yeah, Sid, I looked up to see, remember when Letterman would have on his mom a lot, right? And it was a great little bit
By the way, Joe, I do the same thing. This audience loves my 91-year-old mother, Naomi. She's a huge star in this city.
And my mother's name was Naomi also, a great name.
No kidding.
Make a comeback. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Irish girl. Great Irish girl. But here's the thing. In terms of exposure for Savannah Guthrie's mom, it was almost non-existent. She had her on once years ago for like a Mother's Day segment for about 8 seconds. So it's not like she's the mom that is now in the national spotlight because of her daughter. And the thing is, they didn't take her wallet. They didn't take her car. They didn't take anything of value from the house. So I think this was just a random act, and now they're finding some blood at the scene, and no ransom has been asked for. So if this was connected to Savannah Guthrie, well, they would have done that by now. Right. I think this is just a sick person or people that did this. Savannah Guthrie's mom can't walk more than 50 feet without help. She's on medication that if she doesn't take it every 24 hours, things could go south in a hurry.
And by the way, the medication was left at the house. That's bad news.
That's very bad news. Not like these kidnappers probably have that on them, right? It's not over-the-counter stuff, I'm sure. So, yeah, it's everything looks bad here. It's horrible this had to happen to anybody, and it just feels like it's random at this point because if money was involved, it would have made itself apparent.
You're right. This is the great Joe Concha doing a tremendous job for us, 9 p.m. weeknights. Bill O'Reilly, the all-time great, steps out. Not easy shoes to fill, but Concha doing a tremendous job, 9 p.m. every weeknight. He's also great on Fox News, and he's just a very smart and entertaining guy. You mentioned Melania, and the movie came out last weekend, and, the crazy libs and Democrats, they defaced her posters in movie theaters around the country. They really wrote and did some awful stuff. Look, we were hoping to do 5 million, right? 5 million. Looks like she did 8. So unless these numbers are not accurate, Melania's first weekend, her documentary, The Best in 15 Years, kicked some major ass, Joe Concha.
Major ass. Thank you. I'm glad I could say that on the air. No FCC violations. This is awesome. Major ass. Look, Sid, I love the fact that you had people screaming about Don Lemon's First Amendment rights being stripped to him by a fascist dictator in Donald Trump, and then they're defacing posters of Melania Trump's movie, right? A very benign thing about a first lady. And look, as you said, 8 million blows away expectations. Best performing documentary in movie theaters in 15 years. But the disconnect between critics, who are all liberal, and audiences, really incredible. So it's a site called Rotten Tomatoes where it gives you critics' reviews of a movie and then what the audience thinks as well. And then they come up with this formula that says, okay, here's the percentage of critics who thought this was great, and here's the percentage of audiences who thought it was great. And they have some sort of algorithm where, let's say, for instance, Shawshank Redemption or Forrest Gump, which came out in the same year, which is amazing to me, that got about 96% critics Rotten Tomatoes and about the same for audiences. So yeah, audiences loved it, critics loved it. Great, we all get it. Here with Melania, 10% rating by critics, 99% by audiences. Same thing happened with Reagan 2 years ago with Dennis Quaid. 18% by critics. They all hated it because even if they didn't see it, they said they're going to hate it because that's what they want their readers to hear from them, to give them some red meat. 99% rating from audiences. So this is how it's going to work. If you're conservative, you put out a movie about anything related to religion, or in this case, a first lady of a president who's been elected twice in 2 non-consecutive terms. We haven't seen that since Grover Cleveland. Well, they're going to say bad things about her, and they'll say wonderful things about Michelle Obama's insufferable podcast where she complains about everything in life. But here, Melania Trump says, F you to everybody. Look at this best performing documentary in nearly 2 decades.
Joe Concha. So you mentioned Don Lemon. I saw Pam Bondi on my buddy Sean Hannity's show last night, and this is pretty cut and dry. I know Lemon is trying to convince people it's different for him because he had a camera. So what? He scared the living daylights out of the poor priest in that place. Little kids were crying when they saw Don Lemon. This is clearly a violation of the BASE Act. He broke the law. Why is Bill Maher defending this guy?
And the KKK Act as well. Yeah, Don Lemon. He's the Rosa Parks of journalism now, right? He's a guy who's being persecuted for no reason. This clown who got fired from CNN, and then CNN puts out a statement in support of him. I guess CNN supports now the storming of churches. And as you said, kids were crying because you had these maniacs getting up in their faces and saying, your parents are Nazis. Meanwhile, the parents can't get to their kids downstairs. They don't know if these are terrorists, if it's a school shooting. And then even these maniacs who go in there say, oh, this is not a house of worship. This is a house of hell. As you said, Don Lemon's up in the face of the pastor, lecturing him about the First Amendment. The bottom line is, if you're a journalist, you can't hide behind the First Amendment when you do an illegal act, which is to go on to a private property, a house of worship, and storm the place. He gave people coffee and donuts beforehand. It's on video. Yeah. He kissed the organizer of that before it happened, and then said, oh, I didn't know it was going to happen. Yeah, sure, Don. You left your estate in Oyster Bay on the water in New York, flew all the way to Minneapolis, where it's minus 50 degrees out, found the one church in all of Minnesota where a storming was going to go on, and you didn't know it was going to happen? Screw you. But here's the thing. It's the best thing that ever happened to his career, Sid.
It is, because he was irrelevant, and now we're talking about him again.
If you're thinking about changing schools, why wait? At Manhattan University, love those guys. You don't have to start over. With transfer-friendly pathways, your credits count, and you keep moving forward. From day one, you're part of Jasper Nation, preparing for the real world. And with New York City just a train away, opportunity is everywhere. Ready to move forward without missing a step? Visit manhattan.edu/transfer and enroll today. Manhattan University. Don't start over, move forward.